The Black Podcast. I'm excited like I am every Thursday because we always have special guests, and it just fills my little heart up when to know that we have just made some real relevant connections and relationships with our guests. And so I'm just excited about our next guest, and his story is amazing. So please make sure that you are sharing the video, because the only way our community can grow is if we're sharing the knowledge, sharing, the connections with each other, building those relevant relationships. So I need you to make sure that you share on your social media, because you never know who's in your circle of people that may need to hear the story. And so we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. My name is Dr. Sherelle Hobson, and I am an a student athlete resilience coach and an athletic program enthusiast. And I'm so passionate about what athletics is doing for our young Black males. Are they prepared to move to the next level, whether it's in professional sports or just being entrepreneurs or just getting a regular job? Just are our programs in athletics for high school, are they doing their job? Are we preparing our young Black males to be productive? And so I'm very passionate about that. And I mean, I think about it night and day. Brian probably would agree. I think about this constantly. But my doctorate is in sports administration and leadership. And my study was on African-American males and the effects of athletics on their educational plans. So again, connecting with people like Brian or, different sports psychologists that really know that there's a lot of issues or challenges that our young Black men face while they're in athletics. And so we like to make sure that here on the Black Podcast, that while we're mentoring and connecting with these young men, that they have relevant connections and real connections and relationships with our guests. And so that's what the Black Podcast is about. You can always check us out on We Are HSBA and learn more about what I do in my field as well as what Brian does in his. And so again, one thing that I do is I help coaches to create safe places for their athletes. And what I mean by safe places, it means that helping them with their identity, making sure that they have a safe place that they feel comfortable telling each other how they feel and what they need and why their motivation, their why behind why they're doing the things that they're doing, and what kind of extra help or resources can we give them. So that's what I mean by a safe place. And through my program, I help coaches to have a 90% matriculation. So not just getting to college, but making sure that when they get there, that they're successful. So please make sure that you are looking at what we're doing here on the Black Podcast and what I'm doing in my space, as well as what Brian is doing in space, because you never know what young man may need our services. So again, welcome to the Black Podcast.
All right. My name is Brian Street, as most of you should know. Born and raised in South Mississippi, I saw a lot of adversities. I saw myself, so many around me going through so many different adversities, and we didn't have a lot of examples around us as to how our life could potentially be better. Now, thankfully, I had the parents that were very supportive. They always pushed me to be that better version of myself, to get to the next level, next level, next level. So once I actually finished with my undergraduate studies, I moved off to Miami. Now, while living in Miami, I got into child welfare, and I started to see a lot of the same things that I saw happen to my peers. Didn't really have the support in their families. I started to see these happen to the kids that I was working with. And I saw a system that seemed like it just didn't care to help these kids get to that next level in life. So I had to figure out, how can I be that change within myself that I wanted to see in the world around me? So I came back to Mississippi, worked on getting a master's degree, started becoming a speaker all throughout the state of Mississippi, speaking in youth detention centers and high schools and alternative schools where kids were being pushed to the side. They're a failure. We wouldn't give up on them. It's a lost cause. They were my main focus. Let me go and rescue those that everyone else have thrown away. And that's where a lot of my focus has been since then, is developing and partnering with companies to generate revenue to go towards the development and sustainability for these mentoring and leadership programs, to put examples in place for these kids so they know that life can be so much better than what they currently see around them. I partnered up with Dr. Sherelle Hobson because we connected a few years ago, and there was an energy that we felt that, we felt a good energy around one another. And then eventually we learned that we had an overlap. and the areas that we wanted to impact. And ever since then, she's been the hammer with me being the nail, or, or both of us being the screw that's trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get through this specific phase? But we put together the Black Podcast to be able to bring more of that example of who we can be. And I'm just eager to hear the story of this gentleman that is with us today, because he's another example of being able, being willing, having a desire to push through the struggles that you may have in front of you to become who it is that you want to be, start to impact the lives around you. So without further ado, our guest today, Mr. Stephen Anthony King. How is it going, my brother?
Peace and blessings to you, Brian, to you, Sherelle. I'm so honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we are so glad that you accepted the invite. And I said, man, he just looks way too busy, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if he can fit us in. And so we're just blessed to have you here. And we thank you again for accepting the invite. We want to make sure that we dive in because we want to maximize all our time with you so the guests can really get to know who you are and what you're about. As I explained earlier, it's so important that we know the backstory, right? A lot of times we just see the glory, but we don't know the story. And so I want to know the story. We want to know the story. So if you can tell us, start from the very beginning, where you're born and that kind of the dynamics of your family, how you grew up.
Fantastic. Sure. Born and raised in Harlem, USA. Harlem made me who I am. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. And as with most families growing up in the inner city, there was some dysfunction. My biological father was an alcoholic. He passed away when I was very young, about 4 years old. I don't have very many memories about him. My stepfather, my mom remarried. My stepfather was an alcoholic as well. So she kind of repeated that cycle. And I saw a lot of abuse in the family, a lot of yelling, screaming. There was definitely love, and I learned that later through, reading the love languages, but it was just expressed in a very dysfunctional manner. Grew up in Harlem, as I said, moved down to the east side of Harlem. And throughout my teen years, became a product of my environment, selling drugs, using drugs. But I was always in the sports, Sherelle, as is your passion. So it kind of helped me escape. Sports helped me kind of leave the city because I played college basketball. And it was there where I was exposed to, different demographics, different ethnicities. I wasn't just on the block with the same old people. So I began to become a bit more diverse in culture. And, I had white friends, I had black friends, I had Asian friends, I had Hispanic friends. So it really helped shape me to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Just to relate with other types of ethnicities. And that was definitely a plus and helped me throughout my life because I was always able to get along with individuals no matter what, color or race or creed they were. It really helped me a lot. After college, I really had a dark place in my life. I fell into addiction, cocaine addiction. And I was in that for about 17 years. During that time, I had a son and a daughter, actually. And, it was through God's grace, I made it through. Through God's grace, I was able to still take care of my children. But I don't regret it because it helped shape me to be who I am today. Fast forward to now, I'm a devoted husband, father of 3, proud grandfather of 1. I'm the author of the new book, It's Really Good to See You, to which the foreword was written by Les Brown. And I'm just excited to be here. My passion is to help others. I truly believe that things happen not just to you, but they happen for you to help others. So I try to channel and use all of my life's experiences and the victories that I've championed with them to help others not to give up. So let them know that no matter what you're going through, you can get through it, and not just get through it, but you can go back and pull somebody else through it.
Wow. Wow, we thank you for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
We want to kind of go back to where when you talked about the dysfunction, a lot of us, we were talking last show about people being a product of their environment, and it could be something negative or it could be something positive. However you look at that situation. So I'm sure at the time when you were going through the things that you were going through, sometimes we think it's normal, or we don't know that it's different until we see something that's different and we realize, like, wow, my life is not like that person's life, or and you start examining yours. Can you talk about how you was involved in athletics but still had going home to that situation? That's always the most challenging part. Is sometimes we can do so much at the school, but then if the home situation is not stable or supportive, the young men usually feel like they're, it's like a tug of war between what I want to do, but what my situation looks like. If you can just elaborate on your experience during that time with athletics, and then also with the type of environment you were in.
Fantastic. That's a great point. And you made a great point that sports is often an escape from the household and the dysfunction in the household. And that was definitely the case for me. I grew up in, I don't want to call it a gated community, but where I grew up, shouts to 1199 on First Avenue, we could go outside and play without being outside on the street. So everyone in the building would come down. There was football, there was stoop ball, there was ring alevio, there was black crow, there was run, catch, and kiss when we started started feeling our oats a little bit, so there were all these activities that we could do together. And we would come out, say 11, 10 in the morning. And because we were kind of sheltered from the streets, our parents would let us stay out until about 9, 10, because we were still surrounded in a secure environment. But when I got upstairs, I was met with the reality of what it was. I'll say, as you mentioned, we often think that how we grew up was normal. And there were some good points and good things that I witnessed. And that was the strength of my mother. She got up, she went to work every day, even when my stepfather would just lay in the bed until she left work, and then he would get up and watch television all day. And once he got drunk, that's when the dysfunction really, really, really started. And there was arguing. He hit my mother once, and I was young, I was like 8, 9 years old. And, my brother is 8 years older than me, and my sister's 10 years older than me. So they were very rarely in the house, so I kind of grew up through, those pivotal years as an only child. And I saw it. I saw a lot of yelling and I saw a lot of screaming, but I saw the love from my mother. I saw how, despite how my stepfather treated her, she still cooked. She still went to work. She still brought home the money. I went to a private school, with uniforms and things like that. So I had the things that showed that there was love, but there was just this ugly, dark cloud of dysfunction. And I grew up expressing myself by yelling and screaming, even when it was from a good place. It just came across because, like you said before, that's all I knew. It was normal to do that. I love you. I want to protect you. I don't want you to make these mistakes, but I'm going to scream at you to get my point across. And as we all know, that's not effective communication. So I did escape with sports. And then as you become a teenager, you get into the beer, you get into the weed, or back then we used to call it Chiba, right? And, I always needed to be the guy to go and be the extreme, because growing up, part of my story in the book is that I was born with visual challenges. I was born very nearsighted, so I wore thick glasses. I got teased a lot. So I had to really wear a mask to cover up the hurt and pain and the stigma and the complex that I had for wearing these glasses. So I would always be the extreme one and I would drink the most 40. I would take the biggest pull on the joint. I would do something so that I could stand out from the crowd. not knowing that I was setting myself up for a road of addiction. And it took off, started selling drugs in high school, started using my own drugs in high school, went to college, became a little 2-bit dealer. And then when I got out of college, I really got into, the drug game, the gun game. And, but there was always something about me. And as I look back now, I thank God, because I got deep, but I never got too deep to where I couldn't get out. There was still this kind of college boy persona that I had, and college, I had that crowd, and then I had the street crowd. So thank God for that, because there was some balance, and like most of us who grow up in the inner city, I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it for survival. I did it for the money. And, it took me down that road where I became my own best customer. I was still able to, even now. So I'm a young adult. I'm working now. I'm out of college. And I was what most would consider to be a functional addict, which means I could get up and go to work. But as soon as I went home, I was getting high all night. So it's kind of an oxymoron. I really don't believe that there's any such thing as a functional addict, because there's just dysfunction. You may be able to hide it a little bit better, because I was the guy going to work in a suit and tie, but I had to go to the local grocery store on Monday and get tokens from them, borrow tokens from them, because I had spent my whole paycheck Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So there's really no such thing as I speak now about being a functional addict. And that took me down a dark road, But as I said, and as I look back, God was carrying me through the entire time, because there were circumstances that I can, the title of my book is It's Really Good to See You, and it's about my visual challenges. But I have some other reference points that I can say it's really good to see you, because I was in some predicaments where, if only through God's grace, I wouldn't be here, for sure,
Yeah.
And so, it really shaped me. I don't regret it. I used to, but now I see that everything that happened to me happened for a reason. It all drew me closer spiritually to my Creator, not religiously, but spiritually. And, sometimes you have to hit that bottom. You have to be totally desperate in order to surrender and only call on the Creator, because you have no other out, no other alternative. And thank God I was spared. And that's the bottom line. So that's why I'm here today on this show, to give back my experience to, I've made the mistakes. Like we were talking, before the show, I've made all the mistakes, not all, but, in my lifetime, I've made numerous mistakes that hopefully I can share with somebody else so they don't have to.
Yeah. Wow.
I love how, and it's been a trend that we've seen on our show, especially as of late, is a lot of our guests would come and they would dive deep, like straight into the deep end, like telling you the struggles, the hardest of what I went through from the jump. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. This is who I am. Now, a lot of people, when they're going through life, be it coming through adolescence, becoming adults, getting into the entrepreneurial space, they go through those struggles, and while they're going through them, they can't see the light on the other side.
Correct.
So they assume that guy over there, all decked out in his suit, like it's been good for him. That's why he's living it up like that. That's why he's so clean. Like he don't know my struggle. So at what point would you say you started to realize, okay, this is what I went through, this is what I'm going through, but this is where I'm going? So where did that shift mentally? Where did you really start to see that shift for the first time mentally?
That's you make some great points. The first time I was in my early 40s and I did a prison bid. I had a prison bid because once I cleaned up from the drugs, I got into business. I became an entrepreneur, a business owner, but money, property, and prestige diverted me from my primary purpose. And in 2008, I got arrested for some white collar crime activities. And to your question, when I went away, you know, I'm a firm believer that God humbles you in your most arrogant areas. And as long as I had money and I was getting it, you know, nothing else mattered. And as I look back, I compromised a lot of my morals and values that my mother taught me. I knew better. And I was gifted to be able to articulate and sell. I'm a salesman by nature, 30 years in the game. But again, I compromised my morals and values. So when I went to prison, that's when I really had time, or a timeout, if you will, to reflect on what I was doing with my gifts, where I was in life, and where if I didn't straighten up, you know, it's not going to get any better. So while I was in prison, I had this one tree, right? I was upstate New York. It's cold. It's the dead of winter. And this one tree still had all its leaves and was green. And I called it the tree of life. And it was my focal point where I would pray, meditate, talk to, and I would really get deep with my creator and say, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Why am I here? And slowly but surely, the answers started coming to me. And while I was in the penitentiary, I'm again a lot older. I'm considered an OG, right? I started mentoring the young boys. I started tutoring the youngsters who were going for their GEDs. I actually started putting on seminars in prison on when you get out, how to start your own business. So that's when it really took off. And it's so funny. I was writing down all these ideas while I was in prison. I had never really read as many books in my life as I did in prison. I read books on public speaking, which I wanted to be. I read so many books on different things. And I started writing down ideas of things that I wanted to accomplish when I got out of prison. And about 3 or 4 years after I was released from prison, my wife said to me one day, you know, everything you said that you were going to accomplish while you were in prison, I did. I came out, I started mentoring youth with Abyssinian Baptist Church, which is a prominent church in Harlem, headed up by the great Reverend Calvin Butts. And they have a program called the Blue Nile Rites of Passage, where we take young at-risk youth, both men and boys and girls, in those pivotal stages, that 12 to 16-year-old stage, where they could go right or left. And we mentor them, we educate them, we instill them with our cultural history, you know, because it's hard to know who you are if you don't know where you've come from and the lineage that you've come from and the royalty that you've come from. So we instill in them their cultural background, as well as educational, as well as financial, and as well as socially. We have these round table discussions where, and I'm sure, Brian, you know, being a social worker, that these kids have a lot of heavy stuff to deal with at a very young age. And they don't have instructions on how to deal with it. And when you give them an opportunity to release, it's so therapeutic. Because first of all, they don't feel like they're on an island by themselves. You know, they see that they have a lot of similarities with the other youth. And so it was really an answer to your question without going off topic. It was in prison that I really made that turn and realized, you know, not just who am I, but why am I? You know, why am I here? Why am I really here? Is it just to gather, you know, material things and floss and take selfies to put on social media? Or have I been gifted with certain talents and saved by God's grace to help others? And that's when it really became my mission and my purpose, when I was in prison.
Wow. We thank you for sharing that story. You know, I share a similar story, kind of, you know, a little bit different, of course, but I remember entering that dark place in my life because I was always in athletics. So that was my mask. I was known as, she's fast, she's this, she's that, and then as you go through college and everybody thinks you're pretty and they think that you're fast and you got the track body, you got all these things. And it wasn't until I transitioned into my adult life that I realized that there was a lot of pain that I was creating myself. I had my mother and father was always there. So I never had a place of, I guess, like a reference, like most people, like you say, oh, well, my house was like this, or my father was like that. My life wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. So I said, where's my pain coming from? And I realized that I created my own pain. And so it felt like living my life in prison, but just in my life, in myself, Mm-hmm. And that dark place is a place that is very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Especially when you have that confidence about yourself, when you're like, I'm a winner by nature. So naturally you don't think to feel like you don't think that, am I in a dark place? Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until things started to start happening and my brother passed away. And then it was just like, I just started to peel the layers off. You're no longer the athlete. You're no longer this girl or that girl. And I had to deal with myself. So when I looked at one of your stories, when I first initially saw your title of your book is Really Nice to Meet You, or Really Nice to Meet You, right?
Really good to see you.
Really good to see you. And immediately when I saw that, it was almost like me looking in the mirror, at myself. Like, it is really good to see you, mm-hmm. And that's the space that I'm in now. Is like, even though things may not happen as I want them or as fast, it's like I still have that core. And when you know who you are here, it's nice to revisit or have that conversation with yourself and say, hey, it's good to see you, like Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror, but if you're looking at the person in the mirror and it's a lot of us have what they call fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have been faking it till they make it. So they never really get to meet themselves, because they're always worrying about being popular or being, it's like, who are you at your core? Who are you in your darkest moments? Who's that person? And I realized that person was the one that God wanted me to show to the crowd. Mm-hmm. Show your pain. And so when I told you about my mentor, I wrote my book, Seams of Gold, Discovering Beauty in Brokenness. And I talked about beauty being peace. Mm-hmm. And really knowing what that means. So I looking at your title and your story, people, if they see the cover, they would never think that you was in a dark place. They would never think that your story started in prison. They would never think that, you had all this other stuff going on, earlier in your life. When you talk about being in that dark place while you were locked up and then you got out and you made that transition, but starting to do works inside of the prison system is almost like a calling, right? It's like God placed you there, crazy enough, there, but to do that work, to make sure that those young men coming out are now prepared. And a lot of us pray for things that we're not prepared for. So while you were in there, you were constantly preparing for what you're doing now. And maybe not knowing that, but, now you're in a place where God was preparing you and he has to take us out and take us into a dark place so that we can really discover what our gifts and talents are. And so when you transitioned out, how hard was it for you to gain that support, knowing your background? Because sometimes we could be very judgmental. It's like, okay, now he gonna tell me how to be a businessman, been locked up. He don't know nothing about nothing, So how was that transition for you? Now knowing, hey, who you are at your core, and now having to, I wouldn't say convince, but try to get people to support who you are today. Because the person they might have known, that person's gone, you somebody else. How was that transition, trying to get people to support or buy into who now Stephen Anthony King is?
That's a great question, Sherelle. And I'll tell you, ironically, it was simple. I got out of prison January 4th, 2010. I got employed February 1st, 2010. I now hold the title of Vice President of Sales for that same company that I started February 1st, 2010. And I'll tell you why. Because when I was in prison and I had that tree, which to me was my creator, and that was my focus point, I realized not just who I was, not just why I was, but whose I was. And in prison, there's a lot of negativity. But through me praying, through me meditating, through me finding out who I really was on the inside, because I kept going within with my meditation. I'd never meditated really, on a deep level as much as I did in prison. And it really enlightened me to the universe and the fact that there is no lack in the universe. The universe is infinitely abundant. The only lack is the lack of belief that there's more waiting for me. So I knew that there was a job waiting on me when I got out. And my job was to find that job. So my mindset, excuse me, was let me go. And listen, I did the whole, I had to swallow my pride. I had to get completely humble. I had to get food stamps, right? And little money that they give you from the welfare system, because when I came out, I wanted to contribute whatever I could to my household. I was already a liability by being away. And I didn't want that to happen when I came out. So I immediately got whatever assistance I could, I was entitled to. But I knew that that was going to be very, very temporary. And this next day, after being home, I got on my grind and I got to work looking for a job. And I'm in a very, I guess, fortunate situation because I'm in sales, right? And I guarantee you, if you go into any sales organization, you got a bunch of felons in there. They really don't care about that. All they really care about is if you're good or not. And I was very, very talented. All they want to know, okay, forget about that. Can you close this deal? And I was very, very talented at doing that. And, I got the job February 1st. And very quickly, I moved up the ladder, and became one of the top producers. And at that point, remember, my nature now is to give back. So all the young sales individuals that were coming in, I would take them under my wing. I would teach them. I would show them. I would train them, because that's always what I was kind of built to do in sales. Not just sell, but train others how to sell and really use the psychology of influence. So I moved up the ranks really, really quickly, and I made them a lot of money. And, they rewarded me with a vice president position, and here I am. But to your point, in terms of vulnerability, don't be ashamed of what you've done. Be proud of what you're doing. You should only be ashamed of what you've done if you're still doing it.
Then you got to say that again.
Yeah.
You got to say that one more again.
So don't be ashamed of what you've done. Be proud of what you're doing. The only time you should be ashamed of what you've done is if you're still doing it. That's really it. If you've made that change, everything that you've gone through has shaped you to be the person that you need to be to give back. And I think that's really what it's about. I was created to give back. There's a book that I read called Conversations with God, an Uncommon Dialogue. And really quick, it's about a guy who starts writing letters to God, and he has a spiritual experience where God starts answering him through the pen. And once he realizes he's talking to God, he's now documenting the conversation. And God tells him that, listen, you were created to remember who you are, right? Real deep. And then once you remember who you are, it's your duty to remind others of who they really are. You see, And the premise is that we're not works in progress. We're complete already with tasks and gifts to set out those tasks when we're born. And then, you know, the natural journey of life is just experiencing those gifts and then going through and really, you know, fulfilling those tasks. At least that's the premise of the book. And I kind of buy into it. I really believe it. As I look back on my history and on my life, every single thing that I've gone through has given me a reference point and a measure of experience to help someone else. And the only way that you can really, going back to our youth in the inner city, you know, seeing me like this doesn't really resonate with them. They can't connect with this. When I go and speak to boys clubs or to youth organizations, I take my prison shirt. I still have it with me. I brought it home with me, you know, and I let them know. Most of them don't even really know what it is, you know. But I tell them, this is my prison shirt. It still has my name and my state number on it. And I tell them, this is mine. And I let them know that this portion of my life does not define me. This is who I was, but this is who I am today. So no matter what you're going through, don't think that that's you for the rest of your life. You could be this, and I'm using this as just an example, but your life can be better. So, you know, it's really important to, back to your point about not being accepted. I always had the image. I always had the gift of gab. I always had that persona. I always had that charm. You know, I could shoot the mean with the best of them.
That's the Harlem in you. That's the Harlem in you.
Exactly. Exactly. So whether it was on the corner shooting dice or whether it was in the boardroom, I knew how to handle myself.
Man, and so much of what you just stated, a lot of people never get to who it is that they were meant to be in life because they're too caught up on being afraid of who they were.
Correct.
Now, they prevent themselves from moving forward, from talking to the right person, from going into the right room, because they are judging themselves off of who they were, and not even giving these people who don't even know who you were, not even giving them a chance to judge you based off of what you're bringing to the table today. And that's why, you know, I started my company back in 2018. And I named it what I named it. Your legacy begins now, because far too many of us, we think that our legacy is going to be a semblance of what our parents' legacy has been, of what, you know, cousin over there who's locked up. You know, we assume that that's what it's going to be, but all we have to do is get in front of a Stephen Anthony King. All we have to do is get in front of a Dr. Sherelle Hobson and just listen to the struggles that they went through, because looking at them right now, you can't tell what their story was. Mm-hmm. So nobody can tell what your story is. Be your own curator, the narrative that you want to put out there, and then embody it and then put it on display. And one of the things that when I go and speak in the juvenile detention center, talk about business with the guys, I'm like, you know, you guys already have a business mindset. If you're out there slanging drugs, like you're an entrepreneur already. Let's just transition it into something to where you ain't looking over your shoulder every 2 minutes, seeing who's gonna come and snatch you up. So, you know, kind of give us a little insight on, you know, just looking back at some of the roughest times that you had coming up. What looking at where you are now, what are some of the thoughts that go through your mind when it comes to just like that reflection? Like, I actually was in prison and here I am now. Like, what does it feel like to actually be on that complete opposite side of the spectrum? Because I know somebody's going to come across this video, this audio that can relate to the beginning of your story. So looking back at it, kind of what is that emotion to you?
One word: gratitude. Straight like that, gratitude. And gratitude fuels my purpose and my passion. Brian, I owe. It didn't have to be this way. It's really good to see you from a number of different standpoints and a number of different experiences that I've been in. So as I look back and see how God's grace was covering me, listen, gratitude is not just saying thank you. Gratitude is an action word. And that's what I'm taking when I come on shows like yours. And same with you folks, right? I owe. It is my duty to give back in any way, shape, or form I can. You know, it's so funny. I was smiling when you talked about, you know, the youngsters in the juvenile detention center being businessmen. That's what I was telling them when I was in prison. You know how to run a business. There's no difference between you and Donald Trump or Puffy. It's just a product you're selling, right?
And you got people that's following you, and that's your employers.
Exactly. You have employees, you have inventory, you have profit and loss, you know, and you're making a profit. So you know how to operate a business. Just get a better product, like you said, so you don't have to look over your shoulder. And, you know, you could see kind of the light bulb going in their head. And it, you know, tying all this in to your point, gratitude, that's it. That's what fuels my purpose, because I owe. It doesn't have to be this way. But what I find, and I don't want to jump around a little bit, but it kind of ties in when I think about my prison experience and all those young gentlemen up there. You know, the biggest epidemic going on is fatherlessness, especially in the African American community, because all these young boys want is the nurturing, the inherent nurturing that a father is supposed to give them. Exactly. They would run up to me, they would crowd around me, you know. I'd see them talk. I could even like scold some of them and they would take it, you know, and you don't do stuff like that in prison. But they knew it wasn't coming from a place of intimidation or aggressiveness. They knew it was coming from a place of love. You know, I started telling them there were guys up there with names like Havoc and things like that. And I would tell them, listen, man, you are what you say you are. So what is the definition of havoc? That's who you are. Is that who you want to be? You know, most of them had children. Is that who you want your child to be? You know, and they would listen to me like starry-eyed. And when they would see me in the yard or we'd be working out, you know, they would run up to me, kind of like a kid was running up to their father, because I was giving them that love and that nurturing that they had never really received, whether it was because of the system that took the father out the house, or the drugs that took the father out the house, or the prison industrial system that took the father out the house. You know, naturally, children are supposed to be balanced with nurturing from mother and father. And so many of our youth are just getting it from the single mother, right? And God bless her, she's doing a phenomenal job. But we always have that yearning for that love from a father. I'm 55 years old. I've never bought a Father's Day card in my life. And a lot of the gentlemen that I surround myself with are older gentlemen. And when I'm with them, they make me feel like a little kid.
So and I don't mean to cut you off, but how were you able to model a father figure without really necessarily experiencing a father figure? Like,
that's a great question, Sherelle. And the only thing I can say is it was my desire and my commitment that when I had children, they would never have to feel what I felt. That's really all. Plus sports, coaches. You know, I had some heck of a coaches, you know, growing up, whether it was basketball, whether it was football, a few teachers. And I would latch on to my friends who had fathers in the household. So I would always be in their households. I grew up with Malik Yoba and his family, right, since the age of 10 years old. And Malik often talks about his father, God rest his soul. And he was that father to all of us. You know, he would sit us down, very spiritual man, very philosophical man, and he would teach us. He would take us to the beach and things like that. So I did have examples, right? But at the end of the day, I had to go home, and I couldn't have it all the time. I could only get that experience when I was hanging out with Malik or some of my other friends who had fathers in the household. So I definitely had some positive role models. I think that, coupled with my commitment to saying, I never want my children to feel, to yearn for a father's affection or a father's tutelage or a father's love.
Yeah, and you never get too old, for that love. I mean, I think about how my relationship with my father has grown just every year as I get older. The conversations change, and his love for me is always the same, but it's the things that I've learned, and I'm so grateful to have him, because what I've learned from my father has shaped me how I am as a woman, how to talk, how to treat a man, how to talk to a man, how, what kind of things, you do. I mean, a lot of things I still have to learn on my own as well, but just having that as a model, and me being able to see as a woman what a man does, what it means for a man, to be with a family and be committed and be, hardworking and be honest, just certain things I've seen. So it was always hard for me to see something different. So when I saw something that was a little bit different, I was like, I don't know, because I ain't used to that. Yeah. But I also had to learn through my father. He would say, well, every man's going to have his own journey, but these are the beginnings of things that you should see in a man if he cares for you, if he loves you, if he wants to be with you. These are the things that you're going to see. So I thank you for not being one of those men who may feel bitter about their father not being there, but knowing, hey, I can make a difference. I am the change, and paying it forward. So I thank you for that. We talked about 3 P's, and I want you to kind of go over that. If you can go over what the first P was, or what the first P is, and what it's about to you, so we can dive into that as well.
Sure. The first is purpose. Knowing why you are. Why are you here? I've gone through one year, I went to 14 funerals. It was a lot. Started out with my mother, and in 1 year, 14 funerals. And when you go to funerals, people go up and they're saying things about the individual who's transitioned. And I would sit there and I would reflect, what are people going to say about me? And I had to do it 14 times in 1 year. And, in the beginning, the jokes, and he dressed nice, and he had the gift of gab, and, he had hops so he could dunk on anybody, things like that, But then as the funerals kept coming, the thoughts became more substantive, if you will. Like, it's not about what I got, right? What are people going to say about what I was able to give? How did I pour into people? And in a weird way, that became a motivation. As eerie and as morbid as it may seem, I started using that as kind of an anchor that when it's my time to go, I want people to come up here and be able to say that I poured into them. And, I'm in a 12-step program, as a recovering addict. And that is the premise. One of the mantras is, you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. So over the years, I've been groomed to give back through my experiences. And again, I'm one to say that your purpose is often disguised as your pain. And when you really think about it, think about all the things that we've gone through that we thought we'd never get through, that we're not going through now. God's grace. And from that, gifts were birthed. Number one, the gift of experience. And again, I believe that gift is not for you. It's for me to put in a box, put a bow on it,
and give it to somebody else.
Yeah, give it to the person who's about to embark on the journey that I may have just come through. And the second is reference point. And the reference point is for me, because now, you know, I've gone through life's challenges, right? And we all know life doesn't always show up with the high heels and the makeup on, right? Life can get real ugly sometimes. You know, life can show up with that house coat that you hold like this.
And that bonnet, man.
And the slippers, you know?
Yeah.
Right? But now I have a reference point that when life shows up in all of its ugliness, I can pull that reference point off the shelf and say, life, you may not be looking your best right now, but this reference point tells me that you can clean up real nice, you know? And there's a young lady, I'm in Les Brown's academy, right, called Hungry to Speak. And part of what we do is based off of quotes, individual quotes that we originate. And a young lady by the name of Kinta Pierre says, when you think things are falling apart, they're actually falling together. You know, so it's all those experiences that have helped shape me to be who I am so that I can just give back. I'm being armored up every experience that I have. And I've learned, you know, through a lot of research and a lot of seeking of information to try my best. I'm not perfect at it, but don't label experiences as good or bad, because the minute you label them, you attach an emotion to them. And now you kind of become on an emotional roller coaster. I try to stay emotionally level. That doesn't mean that I don't get excited or I don't get happy, but I'm very careful of my words because words have power. Words are energy. And when you put enough energy together, it creates matter. So I don't like to say I'm going through storms or these are bad times or I'm broke or anything like that. You know, I just call it challenges. That's it. Life's challenges. And being competitive, growing up in sports, I'm always up to face the challenge. And it helps me to really put things in perspective. They're really not that big, you know, at all. Because everything that I've gone through, I've gotten through, and I'm still here, you know.
So I'm over here, you know, I'm listening. And I think back to a lot of the personal development training that I've gotten over the last, 2021, over the last 9 years. I tiptoed into the entrepreneurial space back in 2012 with a network marketing company. And I wasn't the person I needed to be successful with that company, but I fell in love with the personal development. So I started to just listen to speakers. Les Brown was one of the first ones I started listening to on a daily basis. You couldn't find me anywhere without my earplugs in, listening to something.
That's my God.
I remember one of the leaders, actually he was the VP of sales for the company that I was working with at the time. And in one of his trainings, it was actually a 4-disc set that he did back in 2003. He did the training in 2003, and it was released in 2004. And one of the things that he mentioned in that training was how it's so frequent that we hear people that say, like, create this vision board, like set goals of where you want to be, what you want to see. But some people, where they grow up, nothing that they've seen is an example of what they want. So when they put vision board together, some of them were like, I want to make it out the hood. I don't know what it looked like out there, but like, I just want to make it out. So a lot of times we say, like, write what life you want. We think about the law of attraction, think about, write, draw, paste it here and there, what you want. But sometimes, taking it back to the fatherless example, sometimes you have to just look at, okay, what is the opposite of what I see? What can I kind of make up in my mind could be the opposite of what I see? And I look back at my childhood. There was things that I experienced as a child, like, I don't want to treat my wife like that. I don't want it to do that. I don't want to do that. So let me figure out how to do the opposite of that. And a lot of times that's the starting point. And when you start doing the opposite of what you don't want to carry into your future, you start to attract a lot more of what that opposite is. So you know, whenever Sherelle asked you that question, it kind of made me think about that. Whereas a lot of times we we're going to automatically see the things that we know. If we stop, and I wrote here in the little box earlier, and I was about to post it when you were speaking. Sometimes we need to be forced to take a time out so we can actually think about the changes that we need to make.
Correct.
And when we're forced, when we're in lockdown, when let's say we got an injury and we can't move around like we used to move around, we're forced to be still and think. And sometimes just being still. I think you made reference last week, Sherelle, about being still. Sometimes we just need to be still and just think. And that can show us so much more than us so eagerly and aggressively trying to figure it out. Just stop and think.
And sometimes just be still and not think, you know, and just stay still.
Exactly. It was one more thing I want to make sure that I hit on when you mentioned going to the funerals and that being like a reflection point for you. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this fella, but you may be Gary Vaynerchuk.
Of course.
He's an entrepreneur. Yeah, I figure you probably knew Gary V. Yeah. He mentions quite frequently that the most motivational place to go is to a senior's home and go have a conversation with them ask them the question, like, what do you regret? What do you wish that you would have done? And the stories that they tell you make you think, you know what? Why am I taking each second of this day for granted? Because the day is going to come that I do not have the vitality. I do not have the time to do these things. And just to kind of cap off on that, when I'm working in the late hours of the night, sometimes I have movies playing in the background. There's a movie that Will Smith is in called Collateral Beauty. And love, death, and time came to visit him in human form because he was writing letters. He was all messed up because of the loss of his daughter. And he was writing letters saying how angry he was at time, how angry he was at love, how angry he was at death. And eventually, after he was forced to have a conversation with death, it was only then that he really respected it. When he had the conversation with life, it was only then that he really respected it. And regardless of where we are in life, and I'm looking at your story, up until your 30s and 40s, you were still figuring it out, but you never gave up on time. You never succumbed to death. And you realized that there was something inside you that really exemplified love. And you had to figure it out, what it was, and then start to give it away. And now you're living in, the purpose that you're supposed to be living in.
Yeah, you Brian, you hit it, my brother. You hit it. Miles Monroe, the great Miles Monroe, passed away, one of Les Brown's closest friends. And he said, the richest place on earth is the graveyard because all the dreams got buried with the people who never brought them to life. All the books that were never written, all the companies that were never started, all the nonprofit organizations that never got off the ground because people took them to the grave. One of my biggest fears is to be old and be on my deathbed and just two words. What if? What if I would have did that? What if I would have did this? I don't want to have those regrets. So I'm trying to live my best life right now. And my best life is giving what I got. And I'm a firm believer that when you're in alignment with the universe and what you're supposed to be doing, it just comes easy. The resources, the people, they just fall into place because you're vibrating on the right, your vibration is correct and you're in harmony and succinct with the universe. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no lack in the universe. It's infinitely abundant. Everything that we need, we already have. That's why when I pray, my prayer is not, please, God, can I have? My God, my prayer is, thank you, God, because I already have it. I just got to be conscious of it and go get it. So I totally agree with you in terms of all the people in the nursing home and the regrets that they have. Les Brown often says, most people die at 25 and don't get buried until 65. And when you think about it, it's real deep and it's true, I'm not trying to be that person. I'm living my life right now, and just as you two are as well.
Yeah. And it was through my brother's passing that I discovered my why, and if it wasn't for that, I don't believe that I would have been able to visit that dark place, to have that conversation with myself, to have that conversation with God, and my whole life changed, traveling all over the world, speaking and writing books and doing all kind of stuff. It was always that motivation from that, which was weird because I really battled with that for a long time, because I felt like I should be sad, I should be grieving, I should be depressed, I should be doing all these things because that's what the stages are. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. But instead, I had peace. I was motivated. And I said, well, what can you do? This is what you need to do about it. And I took that pain into purpose. And I realized that now when I see young men, I see my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I make it a point that if I see you, I'm going to say something because you're my brother.
Yes.
And so we have that's our duty to do that. And so I appreciate you. And that's the beautiful part about life, when you can give back.
Yes.
I know so many people that are just living life, and it's like, who are you pouring into? Who are you giving it to? Who are you pouring into without ties being there? Without you having to need something back from them, because that's the real pouring. When
Yes.
you just, I was speaking about that the other day. And I was saying, it can get heavy sometimes. I know for myself, where I've been planting a lot of seeds for a long time. And so I'm like, God, where's my harvest? When am I going to see all this work that I'm, because I'm always giving, I'm always pushing, I'm always motivating, I'm always, but that's a part of who I am. So I never stop.
Mm-hmm.
But, for us, if you can talk about a couple of things. I want you to talk about the second P, but I also want you to talk about, what do you do to refill yourself? Because pouring is a lot, and I feel like there's always, we can continue, sometimes continuing to pours back into us, but what do you do when it's time for Stephen Anthony King to, what is his motivation besides just, the gratitude? Like, what are you doing to refill yourself during your time? And then I also want you to talk about the second P.
Okay, that's a great question. And exercise is my escape. Exercise is kind of my religion. Since I've been an athlete, since 12 years old, going into the gym is my sanctuary. It's where I can block everything out. I can release those endorphins. I actually think the best when I'm in the gym, and I'm the most creative when I'm in the gym. That's one of my go-to spaces. The second is meditation. Meditation is very important to me. Conscious meditation. I'm up most mornings. I'm not going to say every morning, but most mornings between 5:30 and 6. First thing I do before I even leave the bed is a gratitude list, right? I'm setting my vibration and my mental state in the right direction, because as you mentioned, pouring can be draining, and you have to be careful that you're not taking on other people's darkness in trying to help them. So, and I've learned that you don't have to do nothing to wake up and start thinking negative, right? Just, that dude stepped on my fresh white Nikes yesterday, so-and-so owe me $5, whatever it is, your mind can just go there. So I have to be intentional in terms of calibrating and pointing my mind in the right direction. And for me, the way I do that is with a gratitude list. Thank you, God, for God. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for my eyesight. It's really good to see you. Thank you for my beautiful wife who's laid next to me. Thank you that my children are safe. Thank you that I have food. Thank you that I have shelter. Thank you that I have friends who can support me. and because I'm a firm believer that you get what you look for. And, there's something in the brain called the reticular activating system, which kind of, it's kind of like a radar system that whatever you're focused on, it's going to find things to support whatever you're focused on. So I have to make sure that I'm focused on gratitude and grateful, and I see the glass as half full. So in answer to your question, it's definitely the gym, which from a physical standpoint helps me to, or a physiological standpoint, helps me to release those feel-good hormones, those endorphins. And mentally, it's the meditation. I go into this quiet spot. Sometimes I do it on my own. I use breathing techniques, and sometimes I'll use a guided meditation, to help me center myself and just clear out all the noise, that life brings us day by day. So I get to reset every day. And I have mantras and affirmations that I look at. So I have like a structured, intentional ritual that I do before 7 o'clock. And then I get on a support call with other brothers, kind of like a prayer call, kind of like a support call. We read kind of like a daily devotional. We share a little bit on it. So I get armored up. I have my spiritual breakfast before 7, and that helps me get through the day. So every day I kind of recharge and I'm filled to take on whatever, I'm supposed to take on during that day. Now, in terms of the second P, I believe that, there's no succinct order to them, but perseverance. You cannot give up. You cannot give up, no matter what you're faced with. As you even said, Sherelle, your brother, the disruption with your brother that was the catapult to you finding out what your why is. You just cannot give up. I'm a believer that God didn't bring us this far just to bring us this far. There's purpose. There's purpose, and it's often disguised as that pain. And my book chronicles my never give up, my perseverance through, getting diagnosed with this eye condition, and we'll get into it later, and leaving the doctor's office and immediately going to the worst case scenario with my eyesight, the little metal cane, the seeing eye dog. My wife's going to leave me. I can't provide for my children. I'm not going to be able to play the way I want to with my granddaughter. And I had to, right there in the middle of the street on 86th Street between Park and Lexington Avenue, I had to make a decision that I'm going to do my part. If it's God's will for me to be blind, I'll be blind. But I'm not going to go blind saying again those two dreaded words, what if? What if I would have went and got a second opinion? So the book really chronicles, it's a story of perseverance. There are a lot of stories within the story, but that's the overwhelming theme, the perseverance. You cannot give up, because just think about it. As I said before, everything that you've gone through that you thought you would never get through. Fred Sanford, this is the big one, Elizabeth. This is the big one, Elizabeth, right? But we're here now. You got through it. You got through it. So why should the next challenge that comes along be any different? A lot of it is mindset. The minute you say you can't, you're right. The minute you say you can, you're right. Which one will you choose? It's up to you. So that's the second P, that perseverance, and I'm sure you have stories. And being in sports, you get conditioned for perseverance. You running suicides, you running laps, you doing, reps, you always have people pushing you to do just one more. Excuse me, that Mamba mentality. Kobe that's my dude. Not so much for his skill set and the entertainment value, but for the mentality that he exhibits. I am not going to give up. You are not going to outwork me. And that's what I live by. That's what I live by. That's
I
what
feel like you need to send me an invoice or something. Like I need to pay you for that. But don't send it just yet. Where my account's set up, I don't know if I can afford it. We appreciate you giving those free ones,
Listen, when I send it and you don't pay, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to use perseverance to get my money.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I can't. I'm gonna give you a P2 PayPal and be like, it ain't working. But I definitely appreciate that, and that's what we need to know. Our skills come from athletics, and I know a lot of it of how I am. I had to learn through my grieving counselor that I continue to see now, that she was like, who are you competing with? And I was like, me.
Yeah.
Because she was like, when you think about life, what do you think about? I'm like, winning, winning in my personal life, winning in my professional life, just winning in my spiritual life. Like, I want to win, And she was just, so when you're talking to people who aren't athletes, are like, well, what's winning, In my head, that's how I always thought, like, winning is what I think winning is. Winning is how I feel, and so, like you said, it's so much that one more rep. And every time somebody, when you're maxing out, every time they put another weight on there, it gets heavier, but you're always pushing to see, how far. You never know how far your potential is going to take you until somebody keeps adding that weight. They keep adding that weight, but you have people there that spot you. You have people there that's going to help guide you, but it's your internal motivation that helps you push that weight up. And so it's the same thing, like you said, in life. Whenever people are throwing those curveballs at you and life hits, we have to always go back to that mentality. And I always say I respect LeBron James for that, because he never looks out of shape. He's never complacent with he's the best he's the best in the world. He always looks like every year he's getting better, and I appreciate him for just his humbleness in that, and him using his platform for his voice, because he knows he can be like a lot of people that have made millions and billions of dollars, haven't done a single thing for their community. And so he does make it a point to do that. So I always say I respect him as a man first, and then a player second. So I really appreciate him on that. Yes. So the last P, let's talk about the last P that you have. And then we're also going to talk about, I want you to leave the audience with the takeaway. I mean, you've already given us some free ones, so give us another free one, because we can't afford the other ones. But and then let's talk about that last P.
Okay, it's positivity. None of this works if you don't have the right mindset. It just doesn't. I have to look at the glass half full, because again, as I mentioned, that reticular activating system, which is part of the brain, I'm going to get what I look for. So if I'm always looking for the negative, part of my prayer in the morning is that allow me to see the God in everything and everyone. Not just the good, but the God in everything and everyone that I experience and I encounter today. And I pray that way because you can always find fault in whatever you want to find fault. The meal you got from the steakhouse, the steak too tough, the potatoes is soupy, or you can look at the ambiance, you can look at the beauty, that little slice of heaven that you're spending and experiencing with your loved one, with your significant other. In my case, it's my wife, So it's positivity. And there's a book by a guy named James Allen called As a Man Thinketh. And it's really based on the scripture, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And it's so true. It starts with your thoughts. Your thoughts transcend into your words, and your words transcend into your actions, and your actions become your circumstances. They really do. The guy who winds up in jail just didn't wind up in jail by, coincidence. No. There were a series of events that started with his thoughts, which were negative, larcenous thoughts, which turned into, negative, larcenous actions, and he got caught. Plain and simple. When I went to prison, at first, I was in denial because I got squealed on. I had left the business 3 years prior to getting arrested. The guys I was with kept going. They got caught. And it was like, come on out, Steve, they got us, right? I'm long gone. And for a couple of months, I was caught up in this resentment, all these snitches and blah,
They
blah,
did the
blah.
Michael Vick on you, huh?
Exactly. But the reality is there's nothing to squeal on if there's nothing to squeal on. You know what I'm saying? It was my actions that put me in position to get snitched on. That's the reality. So I'm very careful with my thoughts. You always have to think about what you're thinking about, because every 17 seconds, if you ponder on a thought, it creates another thought of similar fashion. So I can get caught up writing, directing, winning awards for motion pictures in my mind. You know what I'm saying? You ever be in the shower and you just get caught up in some thoughts and you rehearsing the words you're going to say to somebody and all this stuff? Excuse me, I'm sorry. So I have to really be conscious and intentional about what I'm thinking about, and always make sure that it's on a positive note, because without it, I'm going down the wrong path. And again, thoughts lead to words, lead to actions, lead to circumstances. And we have so many negative people who just don't think that they deserve anything better, you know, or that there's no jobs out there for them. Or they say, I'm broke, or I'm sick, or I'm tired. You are what you say you are. You know, life and death is in the power of the tongue. So I make a conscious decision to eliminate as many negative words from my vocabulary as I possibly can. You know, instead of me saying I'm going through, I say I'm getting through. You know, has a little more hope to it, leaves a better taste in my mouth. You know, it's almost like I'm getting to the destination rather than just going through this dark space. You know, so little tricks like that. Positivity is key. And I think that mixture of purpose, perseverance, and positivity, you know, because positivity helps when life shows up without those high heels and the house coat and it looks ugly. I got to be able to look at how it could have been worse. I have a friend who used to say, if you think things are bad, they can always be worse. And if they can always be worse, then where you're at just ain't that bad. And when you really reflect on it and think about it, he's right. You know, things could be worse. My wife and I, when we go into the city, there's a homeless woman on 56th Street, and we named her Lady 56. And every time we go, we take her food. We go in Harlem to the soul food spots. We buy her 2-3 plates. You know, my wife went on Amazon and during the winter bought her a bunch of like warm clothes and socks and scarves and stuff like that. And when we go to see her, it just reminds me of, but for the grace of God, there go I. Things could always be worse, you know, and I have to stop, because the only time I get caught up in a funk is when I don't have my wants. Because when I really reflect, I have all my needs. Everything that I need, I have. It's those wants that I get caught up in, which can send me down that negative path. So I'm intentional about thinking what I'm thinking about at all times. And, you know, I'm human, but I try to shift, I try to alter, I try to get in that right mindset as soon as possible to eliminate those negative thoughts. And like I said, with those three, the purpose, the perseverance, and the positivity, it's a great recipe for success.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that a lot. You know, when you, just real quick, when you talked about that story about the homeless woman, I remember when I moved here to Houston, I had went to Papados, and I had some food, you know, left over or whatever. So I'm driving home, and I had just moved to Houston. So I kept going down the wrong street downtown. And so I kept seeing this guy, you know, walk up and down the street. And so I said, I ain't gonna eat this food when I get home. I'm just gonna give it to him. And but you know how downtown is, once you turn on one street, you got to go a whole another block over to turn back around.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I tried to catch up to him, we was always going in the opposite direction. And I was like, man, just forget it. And so it was like right when I was about to give up, I turned on this street and we just happened, I could finally get in front of him. And so at the time he was looking through the trash can for, something to eat. And I said, he was walking with his head down or whatever. And I said, excuse me, and I kept thinking in the back of my head, my dad was like, please, when you get to Houston, don't try to save the world, just, and he was like, and my dad was in tears. And I was like, okay, whatever. But I still came and did that. But so finally I kept saying, excuse me. And he barely looked up at me. And I said, are you hungry? Can I give this to you? And so he looked around, he kind of walked up to the car and he grabbed it. He was still looking down on the ground and he opened it up. When I circled back around, he had a whole nother walk about himself. He was walking and he was eating and he was just, and the first thing that came to my spirit was, when you can be grateful for the leftovers.
Yes.
God is going to bless you with so, and that day I was like, this man is so grateful for my leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, it was like I bought the meal for him. Like, I mean, he was walking, looking up and it was just clear as day. God said, when you can be happy for the leftovers.
Yes. Ooh.
I was like, God, you're wrong for that. And so I knew, it just, from that day, I just said, oh my God, it's just amazing how you could take these stories and things and how he can speak to you through just your actions. Yes. I could have gave up and just said, forget it and threw it in the trash or gave it to somebody else. But I was so consistent with, persistent with finding him and finding a way to get to the same street that he's on, just for that message. And that message has changed my life. And so, you never know, how your life is going to turn out. So we thank you for, like you said, just looking at the bigger picture, not worrying about where you're at right now. One thing that I always quote is, embrace your current place because it's temporary.
That's right.
And so thank you for that. I feel like, you haven't even touched the surface yet of what you're going to be doing in your life. And so we're just so excited to be attached to that. Yeah. And I hope and pray we all going to touch and agree on this, that when I get married, that my husband speaks about me like you speak about your wife. Because that has always been a desire for me. I always wanted to be that wife. I want somebody to always be like, my wife, she is the bomb. And so right. I strive for that on a daily basis of trying to be the best woman I can be so that my kids and that my husband can be as proud of me, about me like you are yours. So I appreciate you always referencing your wife and your family because that's important. And we need to see more Black males and Black men talking about the importance of love.
Yes.
And commitment. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Thank you.
Without even knowing you were doing that. So I thank you for that.
The Bible says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And where you come from, where I come from, he who finds a wife finds a good thing.
Dang, there you go. I tell you, it's a good thing.
Good thing.
We all come with something. So you gotta capitalize and help each other out and make each other better. So I appreciate you sharing your life with us and your story with us. Give us a takeaway. Let us know where we can find you, what events you have coming up, where we can buy the book, and all that good stuff.
Fantastic. And once again, before I close, for you, Brian, for you, Sherelle, blessings to you both. I'm so honored and grateful that you had me on the show. And I can stay here for another 2 hours because we were just kicking it. And, when people are vibrating on the same level, it just comes easy.
Brian, I can hear something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. We'll end up having to do an encore for sure.
Okay. Yes. So my latest project is the book. It's Really Good to See You. It chronicles my journey with eye challenges, specifically 2017, where I went through 4 eye surgeries. I was temporarily blind and threatened with permanent blindness, and the perseverance, the pain, the perseverance, and then the purpose. Because at the end of the book, or at the end of that journey, I actually reached back and pulled somebody else through who was about to embark on a serious and very, very risky surgery. And the story within that story, talking about my wife, is she was my eyes when I couldn't see. You know, she literally she held me down. And there's a heavy emphasis on her journey with me and how really a Proverbs 31 woman, you know, stands by her man in his weakest points, and helps lift him up. And I am so grateful for the wife that I have. The book is on Amazon right now. It's Really Good to See You. I'm the author, Stephen Anthony King. You can also find it at my website, which is itsreallygoodtoseeyou.com. And if you order from my website, everyone who orders from the website, I will personally autograph the book and send it out to you. Also, what I have coming up is a speaking engagement. There's a huge conference on June 12th with the great Les Brown and the Hungry to Speak family. I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to share the stage with one of my idols. To me, I think one of the greatest motivational speakers in the world. I called him the godfather of motivational speaking. I will be sharing the stage with the great Les Brown, along with 14 other great speakers from the Hungry to Speak Academy. And if you're interested, tickets are free, by the way. You know, we're pouring into people for free. So just go sign up, register at hungrylegacy.com, hungrylegacy.com, or you can reach out to me directly at my email is Stephen@itsreallygoodtoseeyou.com. And that's how you can reach me. I have some other speaking engagements coming up, but that one on June 12th is the most recent. We're going on from 10 to 3 a.m. virtual event, and I'm sharing the stage with the great Les Brown. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I really am so excited, along with the book. So get the book, tell a friend, leave a good review, and I'm open to all book clubs who want to, you know, interview and talk about the book. My wife and I, we're going to start a series where I interview her, and, you know, she tells the story from her viewpoint and her feelings and what she was going through. So stay tuned for that. On social media, I'm Stephen Anthony King. That's on Facebook. On Instagram, I am King 1199. That's how you can reach me. And I'm completely connected to Brian and Sherelle right now. I'm family, so I'm coming over. I'm going in the fridge, and y'all can't tell me I can't.
Hey, that's okay. We're gonna come in yours, you know. But before me and Brian get there, I'm gonna have to step my game up on my clothes, you know. Like, I ain't trying to look crazy out there, because you know, we already know that Mr. Stephen Anthony King gonna show up, go all the way up and show out on us. So we appreciate that your heart is as solid and good as your performance, or as your, you know, what you present to us. So we thank you for that. Truly an honor and a blessing. We definitely gonna have another show, and we're gonna definitely stay connected, and we're gonna make sure that we continue to support. So please make sure you go out and support Mr. Stephen Anthony King. Buy his book. It's Really Good to See You. And again, you can type it in, you know, .com and find it there, or you can hit him up on Instagram and he'll tell you where to go. Make sure you go to his website and support what he's doing, because again, you may not think that the message is for you, but the message may be for someone who's in your circle. So just don't think about your life for what you need and what you can gather from it, but think about the people that you're surrounded with who may need to see that book, who may need to read that book, or even just hear his story. So also, if you want to go to the conference, make sure you go to hungrylegacy.com, and so we can hear more of his story and what they're going to talk about, and also be able to see Mr. Les Brown. So it's just been a blessing to have you a part of this show, and we are so grateful for that. So thank you.
I am honored. It was a pleasure. And like I said, it was real easy. It was just three folks kicking it, and I loved it. I loved it.
That's what we do.
Yep. we're definitely going to have to do it again. There's a certain feeling that overcomes me whenever I have individuals like yourself. You know, we're in that same vein. We're out on a very similar mission. And it's just easy conversation. It's just easy. So we're definitely going to have you on again. We look forward to continue to push out everything you got going on. That conference, man, that's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be on fire. It's gonna be on fire. We have some heavy hitters.
Oh yeah,
and it's free, so there's really no excuse.
No excuse. No excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I just want to show up and see what the outfit gonna look like, and then I'll worry about the message later, because I know you're gonna show out on the, you're gonna get the best dress award,
A little shun. There's a little shun. That's it.
Yeah. That's what they say. But thank you again, Mrs. Stephen, Anthony King. We appreciate you, and blessings to you and your family, and continue to be the great man that you are striving to become, and that you are. Continue to be that great husband, that great father, that great grandfather, that great mentor. I appreciate you for being all those things, because you're doing it very well. And it is definitely a blessing to get to know you. And we thank you again for pouring into us, pouring into the audience. And we look forward to what we'll be doing in the near future together through the Black Podcast as well as HBSA.
Thank you both, Brian, Terrell. May God continue to bless you and your family. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna let you leave off of one thing, and I want everybody just to reflect off of what you went through, what you're going through. You made a statement about you won't be embarrassed about such and such unless you state that for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So again, it's don't be ashamed of what you've done. Be proud of what you're doing. The only time you should be ashamed of what you've done is if you're still doing it.
That's it.
That's at least $50 right there. At least 150 at least. Thank you again. Blessings to you.
Blessings to you both.
We'll continue to support you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Take it easy.
All right.
Wow. Yeah, that was amazing, of course. Wow. Don't be ashamed of the things that you used to do unless you're still doing it. That's real. I mean, come on, like that is amazing. Just to hear his story, you would see the suit and the glasses and you just all well put together, but you would never know. That boy was clean as a whistle. I was like, we need to go back and change. We need to step our polo game up or something. That man was clean, but it's amazing to hear his story and where he was, and the dark place that he had to visit. Think about those dark places. A lot of times we don't want to spend time in those dark places, and a lot of us, especially Black people, to avoid that dark place, we stay busy. Busy, doing this, doing that, so that we can avoid that place. And so the fact that he had to stick with, sometimes God has to force you to be in where you can't run from it. you have nowhere to go. So it was just amazing that within his dark place, he brought light to other people. I mean, that is amazing. So definitely going to make sure we connect with him and hear more about his story and what he's doing.
It makes me think about the notion of how they say it, blossom where you're planted. So regardless of where you're planted in life, blossom in that space. And eventually you'll find a new environment, but you have to continue to look up and look forward. And I mean, he's an exemplification of it, like just straight up. So off of that note, guys, we are going to chunk the deuces. And we will be back, same place, same time, next Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Make sure that you're sharing this content. You're going to be seeing more and more content that's going to be made available via actual podcasts in the very near future. So, guys, let's continue to impact lives and exemplify what the Black Podcast is all about. We're really wanting to show the world, not just our community, but show the world who we are as the Black community, the spectrum of greatness that we have to offer, and be that example for that next generation. Let them know, you know what, no matter where you started, no matter where you want to go and what you're willing to do to make that happen. Right.
You can find us here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time. So please make sure next Thursday you are here at the same place as you're supporting. And so the next thing you need to do is make sure you share this video on your social media, because you never know who's in your circle that may need to hear this story. Be blessed. Take care of yourself. And we will see you here next Thursday on the Black Podcast.